Well, we are back with Results Media Podcast, and today looks a little different. We are in our new San Rafael studio, still under some construction.
Absolutely. Open house,
Yeah.
June 8th.
Yeah.
Excited.
It's going to be awesome. But it's really cool just to be down here and to have this warehouse space to do the shoots we need and have our podcast studio, and going to build a podcasting room. It's going to be awesome.
It is. Very exciting times.
Yeah. But today we are going to do another book review, and we are doing Spin Selling.
Spin Selling with Neil Rackham.
Yeah.
He did 35,000 sales calls that he recorded and followed through to write this book.
Yeah, and evaluated the techniques. And
Absolutely. Incredible book. And I'll start off with kind of where he was. He starts off he sets the tone between larger and smaller sales, because he really wants you to understand that this book was written for larger sales volume.
Yeah.
And so just keep that in mind, that some of the ideologies will work for small sales and not for large sales volumes.
Right.
And so he really starts off with talking about the classic theories in sales, which is really 5. Opening the call, investigating needs, giving benefits, the benefit feature demonstration, objection handling. That's always been part of most traditional sales training, still even today. And then closing techniques. And really is what we're going to talk about today is his theory that none of that is really as accurate as we thought.
Right.
And what his research found is that there is a far better, more authentic way of selling.
Right.
And so we'll get to dive into it. And it's pretty exciting.
This book's pretty old, right?
This book, that is a very good question, because this book is 25 or 30 years old.
Yeah.
And still today, to me, it's one of the most relevant books when it comes to sales.
Right.
The Hathaway Group is the one that did the research. I haven't seen anyone else do anything similar to it. Obviously, times have changed. Technology has changed. Sure. And as we go through this book review, we'll talk about that and kind of adjust, or kind of talk about what Results Media does different today than we would have 25, 30 years ago when the book was written. But still, so much of the fundamentals of this book still applies today.
Right, and it's what's led you to tons of success in your sales career.
This one book is absolutely the most important book in all of my success in sales. And I've had some very significant sales success, not just as a salesman, but as a sales manager. I've ran dealerships as general manager, and I've had very, very amazing success and results, and it's really from the foundation of this book. Absolutely.
Right. And I don't know if we want to include this or talk about it, or we're going to talk about it yet, but we are putting together sales training as part of Results University, which is a whole sales training program that we're doing, and Spin Selling is a huge part of that, along with all the other books that we review and talk about that really have become part of our culture and the paradigm of how we go about not just sales, but sales and creating content and authentic storytelling. And so look forward to that.
The whole program with Results Media, really the foundation comes from a lot of the spin selling.
Right.
And not just is it the foundation for Results University, for sure.
Right.
It's really imperative. This podcast, I would have to say, is very, very important because of that. So those are some amazing points.
Yeah.
Just the whole foundation of Results University really falls on this book.
Yeah.
And so I really find it just critical for people that really want to dive into our sales program and really understand what we're about. This is a great podcast to kind of get that value out of it.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm going to start to talk about the larger sales. And with a larger sale, one of the things that comes with it is the length of sale. It's a longer sale process.
Sure.
So the psychology is different in a large sales environment than a small sales
because if you're buying a yacht, for instance, that's $4 million versus going to the store and buying a pair of jeans, or even buying a car, it's significant different process. You want to make sure you get the right thing, you know what you want, and
absolutely
building that relationship even.
And I love that you bring up car, because the car is really helps me make this point, because a lot of people think it's just numbers, and it's not just that. We're really talking more about the psychology in the difference between the size of it. And so a car might cost $120,000 or $60,000, but it might be a quicker sale. It actually might be more implied, because the need to transport ourselves is very, very high.
Right.
And so it is more about the psychology of that sale.
Yeah.
And one of the things that he talks about, and we'll get more into it, but is the relationship. And so, and the reason that I like the car is because, generally speaking, you don't keep that relationship with the car. So it's more of an implied sale, believe it or not, because you're not happen to have a relationship with the salesperson.
Right.
So another way of looking at it is, if you buy the yacht for $4 million, you're tied to that salesperson for years, and very, very intimately, and they become almost part of your family.
Right.
It's an amazing tie to the actual benefit of buying the yacht, and the salesman becomes an intricate part of that.
Yeah.
But when you go buy the car, you pretty much don't talk to the salesperson anymore. It's you buy the car and you move on.
Right.
And that is a significant difference in the psychology of the size of the sale. It's not always just the numbers, as I was saying, but a lot about the psychology built into the actual sale.
Yeah, and the relationship. And I feel like that even translates pretty well to, digital marketing. Or if you're hiring a company to run ad campaigns and digital marketing and branding and all that for you, maybe you're spending $10,000 a month to $100,000 a month. You're going to be constantly in relationship with that team, that
almost
person,
daily.
the salesman, daily,
if not daily,
and that makes a huge difference on who you're going to hire.
Absolutely. In the sales side, I've heard this and I've used it a lot, is that they're buying the salesman first.
Right.
They buy the actual business second, and the product or service third.
Crazy.
And it's because of that. It's you know, do I want to live with this person in my life for a year? That's a serious question.
It's like
when you're buying. It is a marriage, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that really helps people understand the difference when we're talking about a small versus a large deal.
Yeah.
So the other part is the ongoing relationship. Most all large sales, as we're talking about, require a relationship with the customer, and making the psychology different. So that brings me to the next area, and I'm just going to kind of walk through the book. There's so much that I have to say about spin selling after 25, 30 years that I'm going to have to walk through an outline here so I don't go off track and
make a 12-hour podcast.
Because I could out of this small book. I'd love it. So he's got 4 stages of a sales call. And so I'm looking at a little chart here, and it's great. And it's preliminaries, investigating, demonstrating capabilities, and obtaining commitment. Mm-hmm. In the preliminaries, he's talking about probably cold calling, going out and actually generating opening calls, getting to know people, really get to know the situation of the company, trying to get to know the people in the company, try to build some analysis of any problems.
The warming up events.
The warming up of the events, great. And then the investigating is where you're actually really getting in and doing some qualifying, getting to know the customers. And we have all kinds of amazing questionings and knowledge here with some amazing expertise on how to do that. Yeah. And then he moves into demonstrating capabilities, which would be like taking a yacht out for a ride on a demo, or bringing a copier into your office and letting the salesperson go through it. Right. Or it could be as simple as straight doing a presentation for someone, right?
Yeah.
So you just have a proposal.
Showing what your product can do.
Showing what your product can do. And that's really what you're doing, is demonstrating the capabilities. And then he has obtaining commitment as the last one. And that's the one that I want to talk about a little bit here. In our training, we don't really talk about obtaining commitment and towards the end, but he really addresses it right up front. And I kind of like that a little bit, and I'm glad to do it in this podcast, especially for all the people in our sales training, to really get that out of the way. and talk about the traditional, and as we talked about earlier, the traditional training is so much heavily tied to obtaining
Closing.
obtaining that commitment and closing. And I'm going through my notes here looking for, there's a couple charts here that he talks about. Actually, just one quick area in the classic style of doing your investigation is they teach you open and closed questions.
Right.
Not all necessarily bad, but you really need to take it much farther, as we will here. But what I'm really looking for is this charts here. And what the chart does is really starts to, here it is, obtaining commitments. Sorry. And, let me backpedal a little bit, because today we actually got to do some filming on some skits that we did. And so he's making fun of some of the traditional, and we're back to obtaining commitment. And he makes fun in his book, some of the things that you hear me talking about all the time. So I love seeing it in writing. And he's making fun of assumptive closes. Then he makes fun of alternative closes. Then standing room only closes.
Right.
And then he makes fun of some, blank orders. So is what that one is. And that one used to be always my favorite when they teach it. Is funny. You take a blank order and you might write down the boat, or a copier or some sort of product, and you write it in, and then you turn it around and you just hand it to them. And it's blank for them to just sign and put in the details of what they may want. It's hilarious. And he just kind of makes fun of that. And so this chart that I'm still yet looking for and I haven't found is what it really does, and I might just have to not find it and walk my way. Here it is. So is what it is going to walk us through, and anybody watching this podcast, please come back and we'll have all these charts available for you. Is what he's talking about is, so everybody thinks in traditional training, as we talked about, is that closing techniques, and in most training, closing techniques are what is given.
Right.
Now, you hear me all the time. I call them, closing tricks and different things. And that's the way I see it. I see it as a high level of manipulation. And so what he is suggesting in his research is what he found is, and this is what I love. So out of, so the closing ratio for people asking on average 5 to 8 closing questions, whatever you want to call them, they had about a 36% closing ratio. So then the other side of it, kind of like an A/B test. The other side of it is they had a salespeople that on average asked 1.4 closing questions. Mm-hmm. They had a 70% closing ratio.
So
double.
Fewer the questions, double the rate of closing.
Double the rate
actually
of closing.
Actually making a sale.
And there's a good note here. You hear me so often saying, "Oh, you don't need to obtain commitment. Do your investigation, do your work right, and you'll get the deal." And the one thing that I have read in this book and reread, and I want to make sure that I clarify, is that you do have to ask for the sale.
Yeah, at some point.
At some point. So the 1.4 is a very good number because you have to at least ask once.
Right. Yeah.
And so you do have to ask for the sale. You can never forget that. That is a critical part. But ultimately, my point here is amazing that the more times you try to close, buy from me, buy from me, buy from me, you start to sound desperate and in a manipulating format. Not really, a trusting good way of going about it.
Right.
So more clarification on the difference between small sales and larger sales. One of the distinctions we talked about is relationships and the length of the sale.
Yeah.
And so with that when it becomes to obtaining commitment, it actually creates a little bit more of a complex situation. So in a smaller sale, it's you either buy it or you don't. Order or no order, right?
Sure.
Very simple. In a larger sale, you could have an order, you get the deal, or you don't, or you get to advance the deal, or you don't.
Okay.
So it becomes more complicated in its matrix.
Right.
And so you either are looking for in a small sale, either the sale or no sale, right? 2. in a larger sales, what you're looking for is a sale, of course, or a continuation,
Right.
or a advance, which is much better than a continuation. And we'll get more into those details.
Okay.
That's where it gets a little bit more complex. Yeah. It's not just black and white, deal or no deal.
Right.
There's many steps to actually getting a large deal. So that kind of hopefully clarifies the difference between large sales and small sales. I'd like to add a little bit about, as we talked about, the advance versus the continuation. Because an advance is a customer's agreement to actually move forward.
Right.
Whereas a continuation, and we have some good examples. If you go through our sales training, we give an example of it, where it is really a salesperson just thinking that he's got something going,
right,
and he's going to go back and try to make another appointment. There is nothing really set.
Right.
They didn't kick him out. They haven't said no, go away, but they haven't agreed to anything.
Mm-hmm.
Not the most effective way to go.
Right.
I would rather have a no sale, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But we'll get more into that. I just want to kind of make those clarifications.
Okay.
Before we get into what we were just talking about, the acronym of spin selling, which we will get to, and hopefully people are getting excited, wondering what is spin. So I want to go back to my one chart that I talked about: the preliminaries, investigating, demonstrating capabilities, and obtaining commitment.
Okay.
As we talked about, most training is about obtaining commitment, closing techniques, as I say, tricks. I just want to make sure that we all are on the same page and that I clearly make this point. Successful sellers are going to put most all of their effort into the investigation, not obtaining commitment. And we're going to explain how and why you do that. But I just want to be really clear, even right up front, that you don't want to spend your time in the obtaining commitment.
Right.
You want to spend your time where it matters. So a few things that I would like to get in. The customer's needs is one thing I want to get into right before we get into spin selling.
Okay.
And really just talk about real quickly implied needs versus explicit needs. And I really believe that these are simple foundations, wanting people to get off of the closing techniques right away, and understanding some fundamentals before we actually dive into spin selling. So implied needs are those needs, like I've used in the sales training, the Seth Godin story about selling eyeglasses in a third world country. And, explaining that these people have $2-3 available in their pocket. It's very affordable for them, and they can actually see. It's incredible. So here we are. We make it economical for the demographic that's there. It's easy for them to afford it, each and every person. The need is through the roof. They can't see very well. And, of course, they're selling it to the 40-plus group that needs reading glasses. And so in that environment, right, we have a group of people that really can afford a couple of dollars out of their pocket. We have a group that really could use reading glasses. And once they put them on and see that they can read, the implied need really becomes evident, and it makes sense for them to purchase.
Okay.
So explicit needs, and I'd use the same one in the sales training. I'll try to do is quicker and get through this a little bit faster than I did in the sales training, but basically is what it is. Think of, and I'm going to use it for an exaggeration reason, but think of if we had to charge that same person $30 for that pair of eyeglasses. Now that pair of eyeglasses, the only way we're going to sell it is to go into the explicit needs. And so they're going to have to go home and talk to their aunts and uncles and the whole, tribe and see if they all want to put in $2 or $1 each, 20 of them or 30 of them, and they put in $1 because they can see that if grandma has eyeglasses, that the clothes for the children are improved and they got more of those. And that dad out in the garage can actually improve his tools and work quicker and make more money for the whole tribe. And you start to go into all the benefits of the one pair of glasses. All of a sudden it makes sense to go ahead and spend the $30 or $25, whatever we put out there, for the eyeglasses. But that's going to be based upon explicit needs. Nobody's going to spend the $30 on the pair of eyeglasses for implied needs.
Right. So it's almost like the implied need is kind of like that obvious necessity. This makes life easier. It would be great to have and easily obtainable. And the explicit is more of like the kind of hidden in the details, peripheral, but extremely valuable need. Is that right?
Kind of, and definitely I can see why you're saying that, because the explicit needs are extremely more complicated to find, especially when you're investigating. The implied needs are pretty they're obvious and they're easy to find.
I can see.
And it's the explicit needs that become much more challenging. And where I really see it a lot is in like an environment where there's soft cost and fixed cost.
Okay.
The fixed costs are what you pay for the equipment, and it's very simple to see. But all the soft costs, the hidden, the employee labor, the time that it might take you that's inefficient, and all of these things add up and can make an immense amount of explicit needs that aren't obvious to the eye. They're not really implied. They're something that you have to go really research and analyze to actually see.
Right.
Is that kind of...
Yeah, which explains why investigation is the most important step.
Investigation is the most important step. And the way that I like to look at it, myself personally, and this is my personal opinion, is that we are here to help customers get what they want. And so investigate. And a lot of people, some people, they don't know what they want. That's right. And that is a very true statement, that a lot of people don't know what they want. So the more that you investigate, and you're going to learn that some of these questions and the way that we ask the questions kind of help clients actually talk out what it is that they really need and what is best for them.
Right.
And we help them get what is best for them.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to just sell them something. The spin strategy. What is spin?
Yes.
Now that we've been talking about all of these large, small sales and obtaining commitment, what is spin selling? Spin selling is an acronym, and I love the acronym, and I've had lots of people come to me, oh, yeah, I know how to spin sell, and they think that they're trying to, like, spin the manipulation.
Right.
They're, oh, yeah, I'll spin you.
No.
That is absolutely the farthest thing from what spin selling is.
Right.
And so it's an acronym for situation questions, problem questions, implication questions, and then need payoff questions.
Right.
So that's what we're going to kind of talk about here a little bit and kind of get into it. Now, I will say that when you look at situation questions today, I really believe it's completely different. And I'll just read some of the basic situation questions that the Hathaway Group came up with. And they are, just so you know, going to suggest and have suggested throughout the book that situation questions are the worst ones. You got to have them, but they even suggest the more situation questions you ask, the more difficult for the sale. So, and I'm going to give you guys some amazing tricks of the trade, not tricks manipulating, but just tricks of the trade today that get us around this. But let's just talk about a little bit what they are. What's your position? How long have you been there? Do you make the purchasing decision? We're always looking for, the decision maker. What do you see as your objectives in this area? What sort of business do you run? These are situational questions. Now, this is why I feel it's completely different than it was for when the book was written. And today we have Google. We have DuckDuckGo. We have some of the most amazing research tools.
LinkedIn.
And we're going to get into LinkedIn a little bit more specific. It's an amazing tool. So with all of these tools at our access, we can actually, without having to go into the branch store, what your prospect's business, you can actually from your own desk really figure out their situation. Mm-hmm. And that's a main difference today between 25, 30 years ago, is that we don't need to go bug anybody for situational questions. There might be sometimes, and this is, and then the next one is the problem questions. And that's really where the term investigation comes from. We got to go find what the problem is that we can solve.
Right.
If we can't solve a problem, they don't really need us.
Right.
We're wasting everybody's time.
Yes.
And sometimes that happens. It's great to find out right away, and so you don't waste people's time. So the next one is, problem questions. So when you wrote this, that's what you'd go in and try to find out from the decision maker some of these problems, and you had to be very fast at it. Today, it's different. I really believe you can get most of the problem questions answered.
So it'd be like, is this operation difficult to perform, or are you worried about the quality that you get from your old machine?
Absolutely.
Stuff like that.
And what you're really trying to do is to get them and yourself to identify the problems that they may have.
Right.
Now, this is the most amazing thing, is that in almost any technology, in almost any machine, software, anything that you're selling, in any environment you're at, you should be able to go in and research what is the common place for that style, that industry. It's unbelievable how close you can get to understanding what they probably have before you even pick up the phone.
Yep.
Now, this is where I believe that we have one of the most amazing sales systems today. And that is that we do believe in the decision maker and we believe in the gatekeeper. And what we kind of believe in here at Results Media, which definitely follows suit, is that we use the gatekeeper in a research mode. So we train our sales staff to go into a research mode and to call gatekeepers as researchers, because that's what they're doing at that moment. It's an authentic, true, honorable way of doing this, because you are doing research. And you're going to use food. You're going to take whatever is the gatekeeper's favorite food to them on a regular basis, and you're going to use them as a tool to help you do this research and make sure that you get all of the situational problem questions in accurate answers, a really good understanding long before you'd ever approach the decision maker.
Sure.
To me, these are critical. Finding the problem's not so easy. I know that I've led it out to make it look simple. So the only thing I can say in regards to this is that you got to practice. You got to practice. You got to practice.
Yeah.
And rehearse how you're going to do this. And we have in our training courses lots of examples of how to do the research. And a lot of it, what you're going to do is really research that industry.
Yeah.
And really figure out, let's say that you're a copier and that's what you're wanting to do. And what you're going to do is you're going to research, let's say you want to research an accounting firm, and you want to have a whole prospecting week or month on just accounting firms. What you really want to do is become very intimate with the processes of large accounting firms and figure out what machines that they're generally using.
Yep.
Try to call all of them in research mode. Find out what their problems are. Find common problems. Find different diversities, and find all kinds of solutions, and use that, while you're in the research base, to build a prospect list that's unbelievable and very, very warm by time you try to go call them for an appointment.
Makes total sense.
So, getting back to this, situational questions and problem questions, very, very important area of the sale. Critical that you understand that the problem and the situation of the company before you ask for a qualified appointment. So how are you going to do that? As we talked about, research, and building relationships. We have some more information on relationships in our training. We have some courses specific to relationship and relationship building. It's probably one of the most important areas in building, because you have to build that relationship with the gatekeeper. And you have to understand, and I've heard this term so many times and I love it, you can't spill your candy in the lobby. And this is what most rookies do in the situational problem question, is they go in and they spill all their sales pitch and their whole demonstration capabilities to the gatekeeper. Well, the one thing I can tell you is the gatekeeper don't care about your presentation. Now, if you're researching them and you're making them feel important and you're getting information and they're helping you and they see that, that's a different relationship than trying to pitch them the product, because they're not going to turn around and repitch it to the decision maker the way you think.
No.
You really want to utilize them as to give you the information. And so research mode, I really believe, is the most effective form to get through the situational and the problem questions.
Okay.
What I really wanted, before we get into the implication questions, one of my favorite places to be, I really want to talk about that once you find the problem and everything, is what you're going to do is you're going to get the qualify appointment. And
Okay.
now you have all of this warm, amazing introduction. Hopefully, if you followed our sales training, you've really done some posting with them, maybe even sent them a personal letter in the mail. You've really personalized your email to them. A lot of strategies that we use. And so when you're going to the point of walking through their door to get a qualify appointment, or you're calling them, hopefully you're walking through their door. They're going to have familiar grounds with you. It's going to be fun and exciting.
Yeah.
And what most people think of cold calling, walking through the door to make that appointment, is very fearful and very scary. We turn it into a very fun process. When you walk through that door, you are as prepared for that test. And that's the way I like to, you know, when you're in school and you walk in unprepared for a test, it's not a fun, exciting day. But you walk through the door and you're ready to take that test. You've studied all night. You're ready for it. The test is not, it's kind of fun, exciting, because you're ready for it. You know the answers.
Yeah.
When you walk through that door, when you've done all of the right work for the qualify, it's fun and exciting.
Right.
And it works. So getting to the implication questions is the heart of a successful salesperson. The implication questions, and I'm going to explain it right up front here, because a lot of people have a hard time with this. And what we're going to do with implication questions is that we're going to bring out the pain of the problem. And a lot of people think, well, is that right? And it is. And as you start to understand this, and if you can wrap your head around the whole thing and really get into this, that's exactly what prospect clients want.
Yeah.
They want that assistance. They want you to push it, because it is their pain.
Yeah.
And they need to understand it. And if they don't see it as much, hidden pain is worse than known pain.
Yes.
And so it is our job to actually implicate the pain, hence the reason that we call them implication questions.
Yeah, and it goes right back to, you know, some people might not even know what their pain is, so we have to help them figure out what their problems are, because we want to come in and help fix them. So it's
absolutely
necessary.
The video that we use to try to illustrate that, one of them is through copiers, and we're talking about, you know, a decent copier size, a deal. And there's 3 machines that we're specifically talking about, and we use one, you know, really wrong way to do it, funny. And the salesman's even talking about just one copier and just making every assumptive close, doing everything wrong is hilarious. Right. You got to definitely watch that one. Then the next one, the right way to do it, we really get into the details of how to implicate some of the pain. And that one was great, because we had the prospect actually really push back.
Yeah.
You know, no, we don't feel no pain there. No, we don't really feel no pain there. And the reality of it is that there was huge amount of pain.
Right.
And the only way that pain would have ever come out is implication questions. Right. And what the pain was is that they had 3 machines that was really challenging for them to train people and to operate. So they would train people on it, and they had a dedicated 3 people to be running on it. Mm-hmm. Well, as we looked into it, and it comes from not all of it is exact, but it does come from a real story. And from many years ago, 25 years ago. So it's not exact, it doesn't follow it perfectly, but it does come from a real story. And they were having serious problems operating the machine. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it was just the manual aspect of it, having to reload the papers and duplexing issues, which is just printing on both sides. And so it was just a long list of things that they had to do. Yeah. And it was truly a nightmare, I remember. And so they have these 3 people. And so we, through our little skit, we kind of show that it's not just and so we start with, oh, wow, you have to hire or pay overtime for the people that when you have someone go down. So that's what, you know, when someone quits, they have to hire overtime and all this stuff. And to make a long story short, is that, yes, it is difficult to train people on this copier, mm-hmm. and it was no fun. that wasn't really the issue.
Right.
The issue was how much money it cost them, how much money they were losing, how inefficient that they were money-wise, how inefficient they were keeping employees.
Right.
There was many, many other reasons that implied questions. And so how did we do that? We would ask questions like, well, she would say, oh, no problem, no inefficiencies. When the person quits, we just hire a vendor to help us, and we hire our other employees to do it. So we ask her, well, does that have any effect on cost? Is there overtime? Well, yeah, we actually pay 1.5 times employment. And then we start to ask, well, just hearing you and what you're saying is that you don't have ever 3 competent people in that position. What does that do to you? And you start to, and they're like, whoa, wait a minute.
Right. Then we have to
start
outsource.
to feel their pain.
Yeah, and then we lose the quality. And then when somebody does quit, then it costs us $10,000 to train a new person. And so it all starts to add up, and they're not even seeing it.
And when they're saying it, this is the true impact of implication questions.
Right.
They're saying it. They're feeling their pain.
Mm-hmm.
They're the ones giving you the pain. And when they start telling it to you and they start feeling the pain, now we can have conversation.
Yeah.
It makes a difference.
And we can really start to solve the real problems.
And now we can really start to solve the real problems because now they're seeing them and they're like, wow.
Yeah.
And that goes to, and we can come back to implication questions as much as we want. I'll never be able to talk about it. But it does lead me to the next one, which is the need payoff question. And in the book, the author talks about this one story, and I love it. And I want to kind of to help people understand the difference between an implication question and a needs payoff question. Because the needs payoff question is going to talk about all the great things that we can solve, and it's for small. The value is much more than
the cost,
the benefits and whatnot that it's resolving. And so to understand, but they look similar. It's hard to see because we're going to ask questions and we want them to explain to us the benefits.
Okay.
Not much different than implication. Implication questions, we're going to ask them, and we're going to ask them to get them to tell us the pain. And then we're going to ask questions to get them to tell us the
value.
The value.
What would it be worth?
So he's got some babies in the background, not necessarily babies, but 4 or 5 years old in the background, maybe 8, I think is actually now that I think about it. And so he's doing his work, and they're all doing. They got a group of people at Neil's house, and they're doing their work, and so and they're all trying to figure out really how do we differentiate for the book. Mm-hmm. The difference between implied and explicit questions, because when you see them in writing, it's harder to distinguish it.
Sure.
It's not so simple. And so the 8-year-old just pops, oh, it's easy. One is mean and one's love. And I don't know if it was mean. It was just, I forget the exact words, but that was what it was towards.
Yeah.
It wasn't.
Like one's about the pain.
And maybe they did, maybe the kid did say pain. And then the other one's about love.
Okay.
And when you really look at them from the outside, and I think the baby maybe did say mean. I forget. When I think of a baby, I'm thinking, they're going to say mean.
Yeah.
Just because they're straight, so candid. But it could have been the pain, the same thing. And some people see that as being kind of mean. Now, the person in the business that's saying it, I can guarantee you, does not. They're just like, oh.
Right.
But what happens is then you turn around with need payoff questions and you bring the love.
Right.
You truly, and I just thought that was a great way to really understand the difference. And now when I look at them in writing, I can see it plain as day. You look for pain and you look for love.
Right.
And you can distinguish the difference between the two really quick.
So he looked at the board and said, those are always, all of those are implication and all of those are need payoff questions. He said, it's easy. They said, how can you tell? And he said, implication questions are always sad. Need payoff questions are always happy.
That's it. What amazing way
yeah.
to illustrate. Thanks for looking that
Sure.
up. That was awesome. And so the need payoff questions probably don't need to go into too much detail. They are basically what you've done, hopefully, if you've done a good job in your investigation and really bringing it all out, you've got the value built up. Now, if you cut short and you don't build up enough value, you won't win the deal.
Okay.
So need payoff questions are absolutely critical. And they are the build-up, they are the love, they are the fun. This is the most fun, exciting, especially after you just built up the pain.
Yeah.
You definitely want to come through with some need payoff questions.
Yeah.
So we had ran a skit in our sales training that I think is just great for it. And so the copier, it's a copier salesman. He comes in and we have a little quick skit where he comes in and really finds the couple problems, and that is that they have some operation areas. It's very challenging to operate their current machines.
Right.
And so he comes in and saying, hey, man, I've got some great machines I can sell you for, and he uses the price of $22,000 and doesn't really get into any of the, it's easier to use. It does actually, and he does, I have to give him credit for coming through with the implied needs, and he does sell that and wants business. But when you're talking about $22,000 for a copier, now we're talking about
a lot of money.
Really is a printer.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
So why would someone want to spend
that much money?
That much money.
Yeah. And when you lead with the price and not the pain, it's not worth it.
It's not worth it. So what you're wanting to do with the needs payoff is load up the value. And so what we had there is that we then followed through with more implication questions. With the implication questions, we found out that there was overtime costs. There was
training costs.
And there was a bulk of items.
A high turnover rate. They couldn't keep people there because it was so hard to operate.
High turnover.
So then more overtime, more training costs. Just kept building up.
It just kept on building up. And so we were asking questions like, what does that do when you send it out and the quality of work doesn't come back as what you need? And some of the questions and some of the responses were, not just that, but the deadlines that they would miss because they would have late deliveries. There's all kinds of answers that we got by just asking basic implication questions. And so then a need payoff question could very easily be, if we were able to eliminate the loss of quality, if we were able to build the training programs to where you didn't lose staff and that you had all of the training that you needed, you didn't have the overtime cost, and more importantly than probably anything is you didn't have expensive turnover rate and huge training costs. What would that look like? What kind of money would that how much money does that help you really save? What we're really trying to do is by asking those questions, those need payoff questions, what does that look like?
It's almost taking that sad question and rephrasing it into something happy. So like,
that is,
what would it be if that pain was solved for you? What is that worth?
What does that look like?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And let them tell you.
Right.
Wow. That would save us. And in this situation, she was we're looking at $22,000 machine, this and that. And at the end of it, the way that it came out with all the numbers was that her answer was, and that part's not in the skit, but it was that it would cost easily over $120,000 in saved costs.
Like a year.
If they had a solution.
Right.
It's unbelievable. And when you look at it at the beginning, you're thinking, why would I spend $22,000? And the truth of it in the first one we didn't even get to would be really $68,000 because it would be 3 machines.
Right.
And the salesman didn't even address that. He just
still
threw it out there, which was hilarious. And then our actor called us out on it. That was even funnier. He's like, well, wait a minute. And I'm like, yeah, we're trying to make a point with that. It was hilarious. And The point being is that until you take the time to implicate the pain, which was much bigger and deeper than just how you operate the copier, right?
Right.
Then you come back through with the need payoff questions. You know, what would that look like if we were able to eliminate your overtime costs and let them answer it? Oh man, that's great. That's great. What would it look like if you had much better tenure with your staff and we were able to eliminate this very expensive turnover issue? What would that look like?
It'd be awesome.
How much money would that save you?
Right.
They start to build, and it's not you stacking up the dollars saying this is the value of my product or service. It's them stacking up the dollars and the value of what it would be value-wise to do business with you.
Right.
So I love those little skits. They are kind of funny and you know fun, but at the same time, they really illustrate what we're trying to do and bring out the specifics in the foundation of one of the most amazing sales books I've ever had the pleasure of reading.
Yeah.
I want to end with spin selling and kind of just what it's done for me in my life. It has been incredible. And one of the things that was taught to me when I first started reading it is, Rex, this isn't going to just help you be a better salesman. It's going to be a better you. And it's going to be a better way for you to communicate with your power bill when you have an issue. It's a better way and a more effective way for you to communicate at every level in your life. And that was something that really hit home with me because it's true. And this really will make you a better husband. It'll make you a better wife. It will make you such a better communicator understanding it. Not just the spin selling. I think to really be the best communicator, you got to go beyond that. But nonetheless, this is the foundation.
Right.
It's unbelievable. And a lot of people think, well, I'll never sell. I don't sell. I don't buy that at all. I believe that everybody sells. Every single person sells every single day.
Yeah.
Show me a husband out there that hasn't asked his wife to go to dinner, hasn't asked his wife to go to a racetrack or to go to his kid's baseball game. That's selling.
Yeah.
It is. And so the more effective you become and the more that you find the honor in it and the authentic path in it, which unfortunately the word or the term sales has been really negatively affected. Yeah. And it's because 80%, I believe in an 80-20 rule. I believe 80% of the sales force in the world will never look at this book and don't care about it. And then 20% of the sales force is going to read this book and they're going to study it and they're going to rehearse it and they're going to sell 80% of all the products and services. I just believe that's how the world turns.
Yeah.
And so if you want to be part of the 20% in the sales force, then this is the book that you have to read. It has to be one of them. I really believe it that strongly. Yeah. That it sets the tone to understand the intricate foundation of being a highly successful and a feel good about yourself. Knowing that you're doing the right thing. You're actually helping clients get what they want in the right way. Yeah. It's an incredible feeling. Some of the most successful people in the world use this every day.
And it's more authentic, you know.
Absolutely.
And that's what works, especially today. Authenticity is what's going to sell. It's what, when you actually can help solve somebody's problem, that's what makes a great business relationship. And, you know, I'm more on the creative side than the sales side, so I don't have tons of sales training or experience like you do, but it seems so obvious that this would be the route you'd want to take.
This book is almost more relevant today as when it was written. He was so far ahead of his time in writing it. And still, I will tell you, today I hear more and have been through more paid training through different corporations and than I have anything like this. In most of the training that I've been through since this book is, and it's the opposite side. Right. It is not usually doing the right things. It's more about manipulation. That is probably the main word that I would find in most all sales training is different formats of how to manipulate. In this book, it's not about that. It's the exact opposite. It's the authentic approach of walking people through an authentic process and helping them get exactly what they want. Yep. It's just been an incredible. It's helped me go from being a copier salesman and making a six-figure income very quickly to being a general manager of yacht dealerships in the 20 million range. All because I started with this book.
Yeah.
It's an incredible book. I can't suggest enough for people to pick it up, read it, listen to it.
Definitely.
And re-watch this podcast. Because I can tell you I will. And I will learn from it, even though I'm probably doing a lot of the speaking. And in this book, every time I reread it, and I've read it 100 times, I pick up something different. And a lot of times it's just, man, that worked for me so well 10 years ago. Why have I stopped it and pick it back up?
Right.
So
awesome.
Very good book.
Well, that wraps up our podcast on spin selling.
On spin selling.
See you next time.